And now, your go-to source for year-round fantasy hockey advice, DFS, and betting coverage. This is NHL Fantasy on Ice, presented by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.
At last, we've reached our final offering of 2024, brought to you by our good friends over at Skip. It's time for another episode of NHL Fantasy on Ice, Week 13, Waiver Wire Edition. Hope you're having a great holiday season. Nick Alberga and Jake Hahn with you as we get set to usher in 2025. What's going on, Jake?
Almost there. Almost at 2025, Nick, and we almost made it to 2025 without firing another head coach. So we'll see if we can do it. Only a couple more days to go. Of course, this episode brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip.
Jake, I would love to be a fly in the wall at the world's most famous arena on Broadway. What in the hell are the New York Rangers waiting for? That is my number one question on today's podcast. When you look around you, everybody's making decisions. The Rangers get stomped and stomped and stomped and nothing out of Broadway.
I think it's even more surprising based on the team and the franchise we're talking about, right? The Rangers have never been afraid to make a big splash or make a knee-jerk decision. So I felt like early on when they weren't playing well, Nick, I'm like, okay, maybe just be patient. This is a good team playing poorly. Now they've been playing poorly for, a month and a half? So I'm shocked something big hasn't happened. I know they've made a couple of moves here, but nothing to really totally shake up the team. Okay, yeah, health bomb Chris Kreider. I don't know what the heck that's going to do at this point. So I'm beginning to get real concerned that we're not going to be seeing any playoff hockey in New York this year, Nick.
There's no concern for me. That's too bad. So sad. I don't know what's going on with that team right now, but to be 2 wins away from going to a Stanley Cup final last year to where they're at now, benching guys left and right, putting guys out in the trade block, it really has been bizarre. So no concern on my part. We did have a motion that we got filed earlier on before doing this podcast. Chris Meany, who's been on complete fire, our waiver wire pickup of the year, to change our Bet365 segment to On the Meanie. It should be, because this guy's been on fire and he's flying double duty for today's podcast. We're going to get to the waiver wire list, and we're also going to get to On the Money, as currently titled, brought to you by Bet365, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. But Jake, the top storylines, you referenced the coaching change for Detroit. Derek Lalonde out, Todd McLellan in. I played the new coach bump game 2, and I hit it, man. I love that win against the Washington Capitals on Sunday.
It didn't happen for them in that first game against the Maple Leafs, but obviously if you beat a good team like Washington in that second game. So look, I'm always in on the coach bump, no matter how I feel about the team. I don't love this Red Wings team. I never really have. It's been a strange way to construct this roster, paying a lot of money to like decent middle six players. And I think we're seeing the effects of that right now. So Steve Yzerman, he has to wear some of this, and maybe he is with some of his comments, but it sounds like he's got a long leash there. But in terms of gambling, in terms of fantasy, I think we can play this angle for the Red Wings. I just think it's a short-term angle, Nick. I don't think changing the coach is going to fix the issues going on in Detroit. They go well beyond that.
Well, that was my first response, is like, why now? Like, why did you make the decision now? And maybe the answer is that every team outside of Chicago has received that boost. Boston 12-5-1, St. Louis 8-5-3, the Hawks 4-6-0. But I think ultimately there's going to be a lot of beneficiaries. The important thing to stress is this team hasn't been able to score. They haven't been able to keep the puck out of the net either. And when you combo that together, that's why they are where they're at in the standings. But, I was just, laughing to myself. I'm like, so you make this coaching change. What does this move you from, 15th or 16th to, 13th in the conference? It didn't make much sense to me, the timing of it, Jake.
No, well, that's what I felt like. Maybe you look at it and go, okay, they could have made this move in the offseason last year, right? They had all the makings of being a playoff team last season. There was a spot in the Eastern Conference kind of sitting there for them, and they fumbled it late in the season. So you could have made the strong case to make the coaching move there. Steve Yzerman stays patient. I think maybe wanted to give Lalonde a little bit of time to work with this season, and probably felt like, okay, this is enough. I don't know if maybe he had circled this time on the calendar to reassess things, but that's when they decided to make the move. And I just still don't think that this is a team that we can back much moving forward. But we'll play the short-term angle. Is there any fantasy files in Detroit that you have interest in here, Nick? You talked about how they've struggled to keep the puck out of the net. They've really struggled to score consistently as well. They have not been a team that I've loved to back from a fantasy side.
Which is a bit shocking. I think you look at some of the players on that roster, you don't think offense would be an issue, right? It was more defensively. But I think around the table, the guys I'm looking at, Patrick Kane I thought was awesome against Washington on Sunday. I would look there. I noticed he was dropped in my keeper league last week. Alex DeBrincat, who I think has to be sparked by this addition, back on a line with Patrick Kane over the last couple weeks, so great to see that. Dylan Larkin, Mo Seider, like those are the big core pieces outside of Lucas Raymond, of course. But like the guys that I'm looking at where it's like you've had a rough start, it's time to get cooking here now with Todd McClellan in the mix.
Yeah, I don't think there's much interest in those secondary pieces. After the guys that you just mentioned, Nick, I think it is more the obvious plays. I am seeing a little more out of Patrick Kane. I felt like early in the year he was really showing his age, and I thought, okay, maybe we're kind of hitting the end of the road soon here for Patty Kane. But we're starting to see a little bit of life there from that file, and you mentioned getting dropped in leagues. So maybe a speculative pickup there and kind of see where it goes. Outside of that, not the most exciting offensive team in Detroit, but we will continue to bet them, kind of play that coach boost, see where it goes over the next couple weeks here.
Meantime, Jake, in Colorado, they make the decision to extend Mackenzie Blackwood 5 years, $5.25 million. I guess all they needed was 5 starts to be like, we got our guy. 4-1-0, 1.82, a 940. I wonder if he can truly be a top 10 fantasy goalie for rest of season purposes and moving forward. But, I mean, it's been no secret Colorado's been looking at this guy for a couple years, so I don't mind the extension. And I think you look at the crease, I think it's almost solidified, we can say, in Colorado now.
I think he has all the makings of someone that could be a top 10 goaltender. I mean, he's got that environment in front of him with the way Colorado has been playing, and they've certainly turned this thing around. We know what they can do offensively, but playing much better defensively as well. And Nick, we would have never seen this kind of contract a few years ago, especially from a team like Colorado that, kind of wanted to pinch pennies with goaltenders, maybe go for something a little bit more in the mediocre range and say, okay, let's just build a powerhouse in front of these guys. But giving out a 5-year deal to what I would still say is a mid-tier goaltender, unproven number one in Mackenzie Blackwood. I think we are starting to see goaltenders legitimately get paid in this league. So it was a struggle for them for years. Now we're seeing these guys absolutely cash in. And like you mentioned, it only took Blackwood, 5 games playing for Colorado to score a big deal like that.
And I think the reasoning is they looked around, they looked at the landscape, the market. Okay, like, so July 1 comes, who are we getting? Is it going to be Freddie Anderson? Well, the guy's always, like, there's not really many options out there. And I think they saw a guy in Blackwood with promise, and they're like, okay, there's a decent investment, maybe buying low on the file because he's coming from San Jose, and they signed the deal. And again, it's not just this 5-game sample size. I'm sure they've been looking at Blackwood for a good period of time, and it was a calculated decision, I think.
I think the only worry is, okay, we've never really seen him handle that true number one workload for an extended period of time and also be on a contending team and play in big playoff games. So there's an unknown angle to it there. But hey, he can step up and prove to everybody that he's ready to play those games. A lot of people that know the position well really believe in the talent of Mackenzie Blackwood, and clearly Colorado, I'm sure they've done their homework on this one, even though he's only played 5 games for them. I'm sure they've watched the file, and this is a guy they like. There's a reason why they went out and got him. Do you think Wedgwood still has any sort of value, Nick, or is that just a deeply, because looking at the start shares between the two, it kind of seems to be 3 Blackwood, 1 Wedgwood right now. I thought maybe it would be a little bit more of an even split, but it looks like they're handing the car keys over to Blackwood here.
They are, and they should. Like, this is a perfect example of having a qualified but veteran backup to spell your younger starter. I think it's a 1A and like a 1D. I think profoundly, and specifically the way they paid him, I think Blackwood's the number one for the Colorado Avalanche. You probably agree with that too, right?
Follow the money. When in doubt, follow the money. Just like our segment coming up a little bit later on the money. They're paying this guy. They obviously gave up a lot to bring him in as well. They made this big splash. He was an important piece to Colorado, so they're going to give him every opportunity. Now, the flip side to that, even though they paid him a lot of money, Nick, if he starts to struggle at any point and, we get that Georgiev effect that we saw early in the year, Wedgwood's going to get a few more starts. That's just how this works, and Colorado's going to want to put the goaltender out there to give them the best chance to win games. So I don't think Wedgwood has zero value, but I think it's less than I thought it was going to be, and it does seem like it's 3-1, maybe 4-1 start share for Blackwood right now.
Buy on Blackwood right now for sure. If he's available on your waiver wire, pick him up. Use Parsonen. And any interest in him? They pick him up from the Nashville Predators, presumably to be their third line center. He's played 15 games this year, 2 goals, 3 assists. Any interest in him?
A very, very small, just because it's so tough to crack that top 6 and get any sort of power play time where you could be a significant contributor in fantasy hockey. So it would be a super deep league play, maybe a play when they have a 4-game week or something like that. That's probably where it would end for me. I just don't know what Nashville is doing here, Nick. I know we expected some deals and some moves. I'm not sure trading these types of players is the right move for Nashville.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, like retooling on the fly. Like they don't want to commit to a rebuild, and maybe they're reinvesting some pieces they didn't look at and say we're going to have these guys long term. Maybe selling high. Justus Annunen comes to mind. Like it really is sort of bizarre considering where they started, even in July, getting Marchessault, getting Shea, getting Stamkos, to where this team is right now in a free fall. Although I will say they've been playing much better as of late. I'm more willing to go around Nashville Predators than I was maybe 2 months ago.
Well, yeah, we are seeing a little bit of a turnaround there, right? Yeah. Where, okay, they're not going to make the playoffs. They're probably still going to make some more moves as it goes on and look towards the future. But I think we could at least maybe back them in some of these games. It's just we don't really get the greatest prices in the betting market on them still. So I'm kind of waiting for that at some point. But fantasy-wise, we're seeing a boost from some of their guys. Marchessault obviously playing a lot better. They kind of stacked that top line. So I think there's a little bit of value from that angle, but still very confused on the direction of this whole team.
Jake, a bunch of marquee injuries in the last couple weeks. Kirill Kaprizov day-to-day. I think Marco Rossi's the guy I would look at internally there with Kaprizov out. Elias Pettersson's the big one for me alongside Quinn Hughes. And both guys deemed week-to-week with the Vancouver Canucks. With no Pettersson, Jake DeBrusk, I think, becomes another spicy addition, I think, to pick up on the waiver wire. Quinn Hughes out. Eric Brandstrom, if you want to go that far, a guy who's playing on PP1. Other external looks for wingers, Patrick Laine, Ricard Raquel, JJ Peterka. On the blue line, Luke Hughes, Lane Hudson, Cam Fowler. There's going to be some options out there, but I'm very curious to see how the Canucks look over the next little while without two of their marquee players.
I think that's the biggest one you mentioned for me is Vancouver, a team I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on these next couple of weeks because these are the types of things that can make or break your whole season, right? You're down 2 big pieces like that. Again, we don't know for how long on both of these guys, but if they do miss that significant amount of time, you need to be able to tread water or else teams are going to start coming for that playoff spot in the Western Conference. So very curious how they handle it. And like you mentioned, there's I think a lot of opportunities here in the short term from fantasy if you want to soak up some of those power play minutes from Quinn Hughes. So keep an eye on how they're going to shift off those units. You maybe look at a Sherwood up front as well. Guys that are just going to get that little bump up in offense. So Vancouver's a team I'm going to have a very close eye on these next couple weeks with what's going on there.
Jake Ensel out, upper body injury for Tampa. Cam Atkinson is the guy who filled in on the top line, although they lost to the Montreal Canadiens in a weird one on Sunday. And Linus Ullmark, here we go again. These goalies, man, they just can't stay healthy. He was on a hot run, now out indefinitely with a back issue. Mads Sogard started over the weekend. That's Anton Forsberg, who's banged up too. It sounds like he's closing in on a potential return. That's the guy, I think, when he's healthy. Kirill Vejmelka, Mackenzie Blackwood, Elias Samson. I have a couple guys I'd pick up there.
Credit to Ottawa, though. What's going on, I mean, tough spot on Sunday. Second half of a back-to-back on the road. That Winnipeg-Minnesota double is always so difficult, and they lost the front end of it. So, you don't want to ever go over on a back-to-back like that. So you're in a tricky spot, and they found a way to win a tough road game on Sunday night. So I thought that was very impressive. But if Ullmark has to miss any significant amount of time, I would worry about that goaltending tandem in Ottawa. But I got to give the players on that team props. They're finding ways to pick up points still.
Nice. We're giving out consolation medals here on the podcast, Jake. Always great to see. Does Ottawa make the playoffs, by the way? Are you feeling them? I guess you are.
I'm like very skeptical on it because I've been burned by Ottawa so many times before, but I've always liked this roster. I just think that there's a lot of talent on paper. Unfortunately, games aren't won on paper, and I think Ottawa's learned that the last couple of years, but it always felt like this roster had so much potential if they could just get a little confidence and start to play well, that this team could be a playoff team. So to answer your question, Nick, I will say yes. I'm going to put them in. I'm going to give them a spot, but I don't feel good about it or safe about it at all.
Fair enough. I'm right there with you. Cautiously optimistic on the Ottawa Senators. Let's take a peek at this week's schedule. Then we're bringing Chris Meany to look at the waiver wire list for Week 13. So a 51-game slate. We got 3 on Monday. New Year's Eve, we got 13, 1 on Wednesday, 12 on Thursday, 5 on Friday, 12 Saturday, 5 on Sunday. The 4-game teams you want to look at: Anaheim, Boston, Carolina, Nashville, the Rangers, Toronto, Utah, and Winnipeg. That's 8 squads. The 2-game teams you want to stay away from: the LA Kings, the Ottawa Senators. Anything to dissect from there, Jake?
Well, Anaheim's kind of an interesting one for me, Nick. You mentioned them with a 4-game week. They've got some interesting files, and I mean, they're very available on the waiver wire. Let's just say that. Not a lot of people want Anaheim Ducks on their roster for good reason, but I'm seeing a little bit of life from that team. Just a little bit, enough, I think, in a deep league where you can back some players. I've mentioned Mason McTavish a couple times on the show. I think people are forgetting how talented this player is. We really liked him a couple of years ago. I think we're starting to see him maybe crank it back up. So he's a guy I would take a look at, but there's plenty of options on Anaheim because they're all just sitting there on your waiver wire.
I dig your optimism. Over the weekend, I watched quite a bit of Squid Game Season 2, and you think Anaheim's got life. Go watch that show, and that'll bring new life, new optimism to your journey in life, man. But anyways, you bring in Chris Meany. I don't think the Ducks have much life means, but some guys who do are on the waiver wire list this week. Dmitry Voronkov. The more and more I watch this guy, the more and more I have to credit Pete Jensen, who's been boosting Voronkov for like a year and a half now.
Yeah, and he's been on the list before, but for whatever reason, nobody's really picking him up. And the Columbus Blue Jackets are a lot of fun. I mean, they generate a lot of offense. They give it up. They play in some high-tempo games, a lot of overs, and Voronkov is just the latest who's kind of filling the net lately up on that top line with Kirill Marchenko, leads the team in goals and points, and Sean Monahan's who having a great season as well. So for Voronkov, 5 goals and 10 points in his last 7. That line has generated a lot of offense at 5-5. The Bruins got the better of them in the second half of that doubleheader, but they took it to Boston in that first game, and they've been electric, scoring a lot of goals and generating a lot of offense.
Don't look now, boys, but the Buffalo Sabres have won 3 games in a row. Here they come. Here they come. I know Nick danced around it. He avoided it for a reason, I guess, off the top of the show. But we got to give Buffalo a little bit of credit here for their 3-game win streak. Meany, we got a Sabre landing on the list this week, a young Buffalo Sabre that you're interested in.
Yeah, Jack Quinn, he's got 2 goals over a 3-game point streak. He's actually has 2 points in each of those 3 games. I kind of lean with Nick, though. I mean, the Sabres, honestly, offensively, they really don't have a lot outside of, Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch and JJ Peterka, but it's nice to see some other guys producing like Jack Quinn. Sabres fans hoping that, a lot of these younger players were able to take a next step, a couple wins here lately after a lengthy losing streak, but this team should be better offensively. They should give guys like Benson and Quinn a little bit more run and opportunity. So we'll keep an eye on these players, but, a deep league ad, I think, only.
Yeah, I commend Jake for having the holiday spirit. Very optimistic on today's podcast, which you love to see. But I'm not giving props to a team that lost like $1 billion in a row because they've won 3 games in a row. This is the National League, and you've missed the playoffs in 13 consecutive seasons. So I'm passing on that front. But Quinton Byfield is a guy who's on this week's list. I've been waiting all year for him to get back to what he was last season. But it just shows you the turbulency of kids. I mean, it's never linear, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. And, last year he was playing with 2 studs in Anze Kopitar and Kevin Fiala a little bit, but mostly Adrian Kempe. And what I've noticed this year, what LA has done, with the losing Pierre-Luc Dubois, moving on from him, is Quinton Byfield is natural center. Like, this is where he played center before he was with the Kings, and this is what he's doing right now. And he's averaging more ice time than he ever has, nearly 18 minutes. He has Warren Foegele and Tanner Jeannot on his line, a lot of sandpaper on that line, and Byfield scoring goals and he's shooting the puck. So he's, I think he's really in his element in the middle of the ice. 5 goals, 8 points over his last 8 games. You mentioned earlier the Kings only have a couple games, but you want to get the best of your opponent. They play on Wednesday, and it's just 1 game on the schedule. So, pick him up and maybe just ride the wave with Quinton Byfield. He's having I think, last year was the breakout campaign with 20 goals and 55 points, but I think he can get back to those numbers, Nick.
Well, one team that I always puts up great numbers and could just totally swarm you guys is the Carolina Hurricanes. We know this, and I always find it tricky to find fantasy value on Carolina because they are so spread out. Even the top guys, maybe sometimes you don't trust them fully over a long stretch. But Jack Roslovic lands on the list this week, Chris Meany. I think he's been quietly solid all season.
Yeah, he has 16 goals, and for most of the season, he's played with Sebastian Aho, and that's exactly what you want. I know Carolina and Rod Brind'Amour is, he's always juggling his lines. Sometimes you see Seth Jarvis up on that top line. You've seen Svechnikov up on that top line, but, for the most part, at 5-5, Roslovic has played with Aho, and we all know that this is a team that generates a lot of offense at 5-5. Looking at the edge stats, I think like 8 of the top 10 in terms of offensive zone time are Carolina Hurricanes players. So not going to get a lot of assists, but he likes to shoot the puck. Probably a little bit of an unsustainable shooting percentage, Nick, but, Austin Matthews is out who knows how long. A lot of people need some goal scorers, so he's a guy that can help you out if you need a little bit of offense.
Means we talked about the blue line earlier on, and obviously when you're missing a big piece on your fantasy roster like a Quinn Hughes, you're looking for replacement options. Who are some guys in this week's list?
Yeah, I think my best advice for people would be maybe to just stream the position. You gave some defensemen earlier that could potentially still be out there in shallower leagues like Lane Hudson or Luke Hughes. But Cam Fowler, I think you guys brought him up, when the trade did happen. And, he's logging a lot of ice time, 23-plus minutes in 4 or 5. He's got 4 points over his last 2. He's got a power play point over that span. So he moves from a team in Anaheim that, kind of lives in their own zone and goes to a team in St. Louis, a little bit more structure since Jim Montgomery has taken over there. So I don't mind that addition. And Colton Parayko, still with the team as well with the Blues. I mean, he blocks a lot of shots. He can, throw his body around if you're looking for some grit on your squad.
Speaking of the Blues, it sounds like there's a little bit of interest in Dylan Holloway coming over from those offer sheets. I mean, it seems to be working out quite well for St. Louis with both of those players, but he's carving out a nice role for himself on this Blues team right now.
Yeah, Jake, he seems to be the guy that's benefited the most in St. Louis. Robert Thomas is a stud, and Buchnevich goes through some highs and some lows, but he's got a lot of offensive upside as well. But Holloway, he's got 13 goals. He had a Hattie last week. He's got a few games over the past couple of weeks where he's shooting the puck and he's throwing his body around as well. So he's a little bit valuable, in leagues with hits. So, St. Louis is a team that I don't fully believe in their squad as a playoff team, but they're playing much better hockey with Montgomery on the bench.
NHL.com/fantasy, where you can check out the entire Week 13 waiver wire list. It's now time for On the Money, brought to you by Bet365. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 or older. Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you or someone you know has concerns about gambling, visit connectsontario.ca. My first major look of the week. Guys, how do you not hit that Florida Panthers puck line against the New York Rangers? They are dead to rights, that team. I don't know if you guys are means. We'll start with you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially after seeing Florida get shut out at home Saturday against the Canadiens, a 4-0 defeat. So you don't see Florida lose a couple like in a row. Maurice was talking about their game in that contest, and I would expect a full tilt. And Jake, there's no positives at all when it comes to this Rangers squad. I'm not seeing anything. Maybe Vincent Trocheck. He's turned his game around a little bit, in leagues with faceoffs and hits. He's actually a top 15 player over the past couple of weeks, but there's really nothing to get excited about with this squad, and I really do like that call by Nick.
No, yeah, even when teams are losing like this, I mean, sometimes you see life, right? You're like, okay, they're kind of getting unlucky, or, it's, okay, just kind of stick with it. Eventually the wins are going to come. You watch Rangers games, you're like, this team is just non-competitive right now, especially against top-tier teams. We saw New Jersey just take it to them last week, and I think we can all agree Florida's a top-tier team despite that tough loss over the weekend. So I don't see this as the turnaround spot for the Rangers at all, guys. We talked Nashville a little bit earlier in the show, how, okay, maybe they're starting to play a little bit better. There's some fantasy angles we like. Betting market, maybe a little bit better. I don't think tonight's the night, though, guys. And I think this is a pretty good price for the Winnipeg Jets. A very small favorite on home ice against Nashville. Okay, yeah, sure, they're playing better, but I think Winnipeg is still the much better team, and on home ice, I'm willing to lay a little bit of juice with the Jets tonight, Nick.
Yeah, definitely. I think you just look at the impact of that Winnipeg Jets team all season long, how structured they are, and anytime I get the Jets on home ice means that I don't really care about the opponent. I got to take that team. They're just so hot there at that arena.
And that's fair. I'll play devil's advocate just for just for the sake of it. With Winnipeg playing tomorrow in Colorado, could see Comrie tonight in net for the Jets, so they could get a little bit of a break. They did beat the Winnipeg Jets a few weeks ago, but that was in Nashville. I agree with you guys. I mean, the Jets at home seem to be automatic, but Comrie's allowed 3+ goals in 5 straight games. And Jake, you were talking about the Marchessault line. I mean, over the last 30 days, Marchessault, Forsberg, and Stamkos, they're 1, 2, and 3 on their team in points. Marchessault's got a point in 8 straight games, 6 goals over that span. You look at Forsberg, he's got 11 helpers over a 6-game point streak. And Stamkos, he's got 9 points over his last 8 games. It's essentially half of his points on the season have come over the past couple of weeks. So Stamkos is plus 100 over at Bet365 for a point. Marchessault's minus 130. You want to take the entire line for a goal or for a point? That's plus 320. And on the other side, Velarde is just white hot at the moment. 32 points in 37 games. You can take a look at that line as well with Connor and Scheifele. That's around plus 185 for all those guys to pick up a point. So maybe Just if it's Comrie, there's no confirmation just now. But if I'm the Jets, I'm probably saving Hellebuck for Colorado tomorrow.
Well, Nashville's going to be in a tough spot on Tuesday as well, right? I talked earlier about that Winnipeg, Minnesota double on the road. That's exactly what Nashville's doing over these next couple of days. So maybe Tuesday is a good fade spot for them as well in Minnesota, although we did see Ottawa go in and beat them on the second half of a back-to-back. But just a loaded Tuesday card, Nick. If you got the day off, if anybody's off out there, maybe working a half day, something like that. A lot of daytime hockey on New Year's Eve. Is there anything you're looking at?
Yeah, a couple spots. I don't know how you can't back the New York Islanders the way they've dissected the Maple Leafs the last couple of years. They've won 5 in a row and 6 of 7. They're into Toronto for the second time in like 10 days, so I like the Islanders in that game. And Michkov against Celebrini in San Jose. Give me a point prop means where both guys pick up points. It was great to see Michkov get back on the board. I thought he was really good on Sunday, had a goal and an assist.
Yeah, he was fantastic, and Celebrini's just been unbelievable.
So good. Yeah.
And he's so fun to watch, and you just forget how young he is. Like the move that he made off the backboards against Samuel Girard, like his offensive instincts are off the charts. He's got 27 points in 27 games and 12 points in his last 9. He's hit the score sheet in 8 of 9. I'm looking at a new formed line in Dallas. It's really hard to keep tabs on Pete DeBoer and the lines, but with Mason Marchment missing some time, he's considered week to week. And last night we saw Jamie Benn, Matt Duchene, and Wyatt Johnson as a line, and I get it. They played the Chicago Blackhawks, but 3 goals, 7 points, and 9 shots on goal. They generated a lot of offense. Nearly 17 shot attempts that line had last night. They were plus 210 to pick up a point, and that was against the Chicago Blackhawks. They'll have a matchup tomorrow against the Buffalo Sabres, so consider that line to hit the score sheet.
Well, speaking of the Blackhawks, guys, we can't leave this segment without at least touching on the Winter Classic, the main event of the evening, I guess, of the afternoon, whatever we're calling it. I think 5 o'clock Eastern is supposed to be the start time for Chicago and St. Louis. Do you ever have an angle that you play with these, Meanie? I tend to always gravitate towards the under because there's unknown about the ice conditions. Now, we have seen some fly over as well, but that's an angle I'll probably be taking, is maybe looking towards the under. But is there anything you look at with these outdoor games, Meanie?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on the under. We saw Decord with the first ever Winter Classic shutout last year. There's been quite a few unders over the past few years, and Chicago doesn't have a whole lot offensively, but there are a couple guys that I'm keeping an eye on. Everybody wants some action, Nick. Tyler Bertuzzi and Taylor Hall. Like, those are 2 guys that have played with Connor Bedard over the past couple of weeks, and Bertuzzi actually leads the team in goals and even strength goals, and Taylor Hall leads the team in even strength points since Sorensen's taken over behind the bench. So there's really not a lot that the Blackhawks have to offer offensively, but I'd be taking a look at like a Bertuzzi point prop or maybe a Taylor Hall point prop in that game, Nick.
I think just because it's the Winter Classic, give me a Connor Bedard anytime goal.
I love
to see the big boys on the world stage. It's it's great. It's outdoors. Give me a Connor Bedard anytime goal. How does that sound, boys?
I dig it.
It sounds good. And I also like that it's on New Year's Eve. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that. Get it at 5. There's also Canada-US World Juniors. I know a lot of people are going to be pumped for that. So you can kind of have a full night. Watch the Winter Classic, watch that, and then leave January 1st to the college football playoffs. I like that.
I just want to know, I think it's like LA. Who's playing on the first? It's like LA and somebody. Like, how did they draw that game? LA, New Jersey, right? How did they draw that one?
So odd. I don't fully understand that one. And one guy we kind of glossed over, Andre Palat.
Yeah.
I mean, his ownership is 1%. I found myself streaming him this week too, just because of what you talk about, Nick. You got the busy Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. You want to get the better of your opponent, try to get some players on those lighter nights. And Andre Palat, you look lately, and it's like this guy's hitting the score sheet. Oh well, he's playing with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, so you're gonna fall into some points there. And he throws his body around. He blocks some shots if you're looking for some hits and some blocks, but very light New Year's Day schedule.
Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win, breakaway, pick 6, 3-point shot, underdog win, buzzer beater, shootout, walk-off, and absolutely every play in between is amazing. From football to basketball and hockey to baseball, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 or older, Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you're someone you know has concerns about gambling, visit connectsontario.ca. Jake, as we tie a bow on this one, coming up on Thursday, we're going back to the mailbag for the first time in 2025, my friend.
Ooh, we're going to have to dust off the old mailbag on Thursday. I'm looking forward to hearing some of these questions and, getting into 2025 with you, Nick. It's been a lot of fun doing this in 2024. We fired a lot of coaches in 2024. We'll see if we'll fire some more in 25, or hey, there's still a couple days left. Maybe we can sneak one more in under the wire. But a lot of fun today with you and Means, and we'll be back at it Thursday.
And the one thing I will request as part of your mailbag submissions, maybe some New Year's fantasy hockey resolutions. Maybe bring that, Jake.
Do you have any resolutions, Nick? Go to the gym more? I don't know. You go to the gym quite a bit, so you're already good there, right?
I think I was going to do like a dry January, but that might last like 3 days. That's going to be my best submission, I think, this year. We'll see.
I'm not even going to try to attempt that. I'm not going to kid myself. So maybe February. Maybe I'll do a dry February because it's a little shorter. That might be the move for me.
Yeah, you got the Four Nations. That's going to be a fantastic tournament, as we all know. So we'll leave it at that. Again, get in those submissions, the New Year's resolution submissions, as part of our mailbag. Week 13 coming up on Thursday. Also, make sure to check out the latest episode of NHL Unscripted with Adnan Virk and former NHLer Jason Demers. Episode 4 is out now, and it features an interview with Brian Slagle, the head of Metal Blade Records and big-time hockey fan. NHL Unscripted is available on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you to producer Phil Constantino, for Jake Hahn and Chris Meany. I'm Nick Alberga. You've been listening to NHL Fantasy on Ice, delivered by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip.